Owning a vineyard is the dream at the end of every good bottle. You buy a little land in wine country, you plant the rows, you make your own wine, and you pour it for friends on the porch while the sun goes down over the vines. It is the retirement fantasy of nearly every wine lover, and the trophy purchase of nearly everyone who ever swirled a glass and thought, "I could do this." It sounds like the most romantic business in the world. It is not. Plant the vines this spring and you get no real harvest for 4 or 5 years. A typical vineyard may not turn a single dollar of positive cash flow until year 8, and there is an old joke in wine that is really a warning. How do you make a small fortune in a vineyard? You start with a large one. By the end of this video you will know what an acre of vines actually costs, why the grapes are the least of it, and why right now, across California, owners are ripping out the very vines they waited years to grow. Start with the land, because in wine, the land is most of the price. A bare acre can run anywhere from $3,000 in a quiet region to $250,000 in a famous one. Napa dirt is some of the most expensive farmland on earth, and you are buying the name as much as the soil. Then you plant it, and planting a vineyard is its own fortune. Clearing the ground, building the trellis, laying the irrigation, and setting the vines runs somewhere between $20,000 and $50,000 an acre, and you cannot start small. To have any hope of a real business, you want at least 5 acres if you sell straight to drinkers, and more like 7 or more if you sell to the wholesale market. Now the big fork. If you only grow grapes, you stop here and sell your fruit to a winery. But if you want to make your own wine, the one with your name on the label, you need a winery and a tasting room, and that is a different universe of money. Tanks, presses, barrels, and a building can run from $500,000 to well over $15 million. Even a modest tasting room is $100,000 to $500,000 on its own. So the tiers are simple. The grape grower, who farms and sells fruit. The small winery, who makes wine and pours it in a tasting room. And the estate, courts and gardens wrapped around the vines, selling a whole day in wine country. Whatever tier you pick, one brutal fact sits under all of them. You will spend for years before you earn a cent. Buy the vineyard, and here is what actually comes with it. You inherit the wait, and it is long. Plant this year, and the vines give you nothing for the first 3. Around year 4 or 5, they finally fruit, but only at half to 3/4 of what a mature vine will yield. According to a Washington State University study, a representative 10-acre vineyard may not reach positive annual cash flow until year 8, and may take far longer to earn back the money you sank in at the start. You are farming on a clock, measured in presidential terms, not seasons. You also inherit a permanent crop. A grapevine, cared for, can live 50 to 100 years. That sounds romantic, and it is also a trap, because you are not planting for next year. You are committing that ground, and yourself, to one crop for decades. Change your mind in year 3, and you have a field of young vines and a pile of receipts. And you inherit a triple job. You are now a farmer, fighting frost, pests, and drought. A manufacturer, turning fruit into wine and getting it right. And a host, because the real money, as we will see, comes from people visiting. Most owners badly underestimate the third one. A vineyard makes money in layers, and the grapes sit at the very bottom. Here they are. Layer 1, selling grapes. This is the base, and the worst paid. Average wine grapes bring only a few $100s a ton, maybe $500 to $650 for common varieties, and a single acre yields just a few tons. Grow only grapes, and you are a price taker at the bottom of the chain. Layer 2, selling your own wine wholesale. Turn those grapes into bottles and sell them to shops and restaurants, and you might get around $10 a bottle. Better, but the store and the distributor take their cut. Layer 3, and here is where it changes. Selling that same bottle yourself, in your tasting room. Pour it for a visitor with a view, and it sells for $15 or more, half again what the wholesaler pays, and you keep all of it. Direct sales are the difference between a vineyard that survives and one that quietly drowns. Layer 4, the wine club. Members who pay to receive your bottles every few months, year after year. Like a gym membership, it is steady, it is loyal, and it is booked before the harvest is even in. Layer 5, the day out. Weddings, events, tours, and tastings. People do not drive to wine country for a bottle. They come for an afternoon, and a vineyard that sells the afternoon well can earn more from the visit than from the wine. Here is the fact that decides everything. A vineyard does not really make its money selling grapes. It often does not even make it selling wine to stores. It makes it selling the experience. Listen to that again. The exact same bottle earns $10 sold to a shop, and 15 or more poured in your own tasting room with the hills behind it. The wine did not change, only the setting did. What people are paying for is the view, the visit, and the feeling of buying it at the source. That is why the grapes are the least of it. Fruit is the raw material, wine is the product, but the destination is the business. The owners who understand that build tasting rooms and clubs and wedding lawns. The ones who do not sell fruit at a loss and wonder where the romance went, turn the page to what leaves the account, and most of it lands before any wine is sold. First, the land, priced for its region, often the single biggest number. Then the planting, 20 to 50,000 an acre, spent up front. Then the establishment years, because those young vines still need watering, pruning, spraying, and trellising while they earn nothing, adding another 15 to 20,000 an acre across the first 3 years. Then the winemaking, if you go that far, tanks, barrels, a crush pad, and a cellar. Barrels alone are bought new and often replaced. Then labor, and it is climbing fast. One large grower noted, "It now costs 65% more to farm a vineyard than it did 5 years ago." Then licensing, compliance, and the whole tasting room operation, staff, insurance, and events. Notice the shape. Enormous costs early, revenue that starts small 4 or 5 years later, and a break-even point that can sit 8 years out or more. A vineyard is not a business you run. It is a business you fund for a long time before it ever feeds you. Here is the trap, and it is the longest fuse in this whole series. You are making a 50-year bet on a glass of something people may not be drinking by the time your vines mature. Think about the horizon. You plant a crop that takes 5 years to fruit and lives half a century. You are not betting on this year's wine market. You are betting on the wine market a decade out, and then for decades after that. And you have almost no way to move if the bet goes wrong. You cannot pick up an acre of 40-year-old Cabernet vines and carry it somewhere the customers went. So you are locked in, a permanent, expensive crop, planted years before it pays, in a business where tastes can shift faster than a vine can grow. If wine drinking rises, you look like a genius. If it falls while your vines are still maturing, that same commitment becomes a cage. And that is not a hypothetical. It is happening right now. To understand why the tasting room is the whole game, go back to 1966 and to the man who turned a farm into a destination. His name was Robert Mondavi. At 52, after a bitter split from his family's winery, he did something nobody had done in a generation. He opened the first major new winery in Napa Valley since Prohibition. But his real invention was not a wine. It was the idea that a winery should be a place people come to. Mondavi built a landmark with its famous arch and bell tower, and he threw the doors open. Tours, tastings, art shows, concerts on the lawn. He taught Americans that a vineyard was not just a farm that shipped bottles. It was somewhere you spent a golden afternoon and left with a case in the trunk. That single idea, the winery as a destination, is the reason tasting rooms out earn wholesale today. Every wine club and every wedding on a vineyard lawn traces back to what Mondavi proved. He turned wine country into a place you visit and made the visit the business. Now watch what happens when the long bet meets a market that turns, because it is happening as you read this. Americans are drinking less. Alcohol consumption has fallen to a 90-year low. Wine sales have slid for years, and the younger generations are not picking up the glass the way their parents did, while the older buyers age out. Demand has been draining out of the market, but the vines were already in the ground, planted years earlier at the peak. So the grapes came, and there was nowhere for them to go. California's 2024 harvest was the lightest in 20 years, not from drought, but because growers left fruit to rot on the vine, unable to sell it. Chardonnay dropped to as little as $500 a ton, barely the cost of picking it. Even Napa Cabernet struggled to find a buyer. So they did the unthinkable. They started tearing out the vines. Between late 2024 and the summer of 2025, California growers ripped out more than 38,000 acres, roughly 7% of the entire state. The vineyards, many of them had waited years to bring into production. That is the trap made real. A permanent crop, planted at the top, uprooted in the bust, because the 50-year bet came due at the wrong moment. So who makes it through, and how? 4 habits separate them. 1. They sell the experience, not the grapes. The survivors live on the tasting room, the wine club, and the events. The direct sales that pay far more than fruit or wholesale ever could. They took Mondavi's lesson to heart. 2. They fund the wait, They go in with enough capital to survive years of cost before the first real revenue, and enough cushion to outlast a downturn. Undercapitalized dreamers are the first to fall. 3. They build the brand and the destination. A name people know, a club they rejoin, a place worth driving to and coming back to. That loyalty is what carries them when the wholesale market sours. 4. They match the land and do not chase the boom. They put the right variety on the right site and refuse to plant into an obvious glut. When everyone else plants, the disciplined owner waits. Underneath all 4 is one truth the failures forgot. You are not really in the grape business. You are in the hospitality and brand business, and the vines are the stage set. So does owning a vineyard work? Let's run both sides. The good case. You own beautiful land in a respected region, land that tends to hold its value. Your tasting room pours wine at rich direct margins. Your club renews every year, and your lawn books weddings all summer. The wine is good, the brand is known, and the visit sells itself. Run like a hospitality business. On solid ground, a vineyard can be a good, comfortable living and a beautiful life. The hard case. You wait 4 or 5 years for a first crop and 8 or more to break even. You sink a fortune into land, planting, and a winery before a dollar comes back. You are locked into a permanent crop while tastes shift under you. And if you bought at the peak, you are farming into a glut so deep that growers are bulldozing vines and leaving grapes to rot. So here is the honest verdict. A vineyard is the least like a farm and the most like a long, patient bet on hospitality and land, with a drink attached. Get the location, the capital, and the tasting room right, and it can reward you for decades. Get the timing or the money wrong, and it will quietly drink your fortune instead. You were never really buying a farm. You were buying a decade of patience and a view people will pay to drink in. The way to make a small fortune in wine is to start with a large one. On a vineyard, that was never a joke. It was the plan.